thanks for being here. We're gathered here together, and we're all aligned in the same mission for the benefit of all the children of Pennsylvania who are growing up primarily in single households. As we know, there is great evidence that shows when both parents, mom and dad, are involved and engaged in their lives, their children are likely to have a much more successful and happier life. The statistics in this regard are overwhelming. In some cases, single fathers are less engaged in the lives of their children than we all would desire. But in the majority of cases, the current system prevents rather than encourages fathers to be actively engaged and involved with their children. The overall impact on the children and on our nation's social system is overwhelmingly negative. In fact, I have argued that this is the single biggest under-discussed crisis that exists in our society today. As a result of the campaign that we undertook nearly 6 years ago to begin the process of correcting this problem, now with the support of the state legislature, and hopefully with the establishment of the Advisory Commission, we may soon be empowered to recommend changes which will be of significant benefit to the children of this Commonwealth. And this will be an important milestone in overall social progress. Since we last met here in this beautiful rotunda of the state capitol in 2019, we have had 4 statewide annual symposia attended by hundreds of engaged participants. We have met with Pennsylvania state legislators and select General Assembly committee staff officials, as well as senior members of Governor Wolf's administration, all for the purpose of advancing our primary mission, which is establishing in statute the Pennsylvania Advisory Committee on Greater Father Involvement. We are grateful to State Senator Anthony Hardy Williams, who was the primary sponsor of our bill in the last legislative session, as well as to State Representative Lori A. Mizgorski, who took the lead in the current session by introducing HB 1731 to create the Pennsylvania Advisory Committee on Greater Father Involvement in the House of Representatives in 2021. That bill received unanimous final passage from the House on May 23rd of this year and was forwarded to the Senate, where it has been moved out of committee and is awaiting a final vote. We are now at the threshold of achieving our first major objective, to better the future of the children of our great state by finally addressing the systematic biases that single or divorced fathers face, and by doing so, enabling our children's much-needed access to both of their parents during their precious formative years. Many of you have contributed to our progress in reaching this momentous point. I'm proud to have been joined by my esteemed colleagues, Reverend Dr. W. Wilson Good Jr., the former mayor of Philadelphia, David A. Weiler, President and CEO of Delta Community Supports, Inc., and of course, Dr. Rufus Sylvester Lynch, the architect, organizer, and tireless champion of our campaign. Unfortunately, David is not able to be with us today, as you heard, but on behalf of all of us, I extend our sincerest gratitude for the dedication, the time, and the passion many of you who are here today have led to our worthy cause. We came together from diverse backgrounds, interests, and various parts of the state because of the overwhelming data and evidence that clearly shows the urgent need for greater involvement of fathers in the lives of the children of Pennsylvania. Specifically, the 2021 Annie Carey Foundation Kids Count report shows that 35% of the children under the age of 18 in Pennsylvania live in a single-parent household. 35%. That's more than 1 in 3. And the vast majority of those live only with their mothers, usually with limited access to their dads. This crisis has existed for decades, but is getting worse. our state and federal government seems to have had absolutely no motivation to do what is needed to address this atrocity. And we could no longer stand by and watch as our family courts, county, and human services systems routinely hinder or completely deny single-family access to their families, to their children. We also know that according to the 2019 study of contested custody cases selected at random in 14 counties in central Pennsylvania, conducted by the Dad's Resource Center, judges awarded custody time on average 69% to moms, 31% to dads. Of these 700 cases, mothers received either full or primary custody in 71% of cases, while fathers received full or primary custody in only 14%. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. And these are cases where it was contested cases, where fathers went into court and spent thousands of dollars, in some cases tens of thousands of dollars. But actually the situation is far worse than that, because these statistics show the cases that went to court. Most attorneys, being aware of the likely outcomes, often caution fathers not to waste money and time going against the system and urge dads to settle for less custody time than they really want or deserve. This results in children being unnecessarily deprived of the needed guidance and love of their dads. Through well over 150 contacts with single fathers we have had since the founding of the Dad's Resource Center, we've seen an extreme disconnect between how people want and would expect our family courts to operate and how, in fact, they do. What we have seen is an unfair and biased system that enables and encourages conflict between separated parents. Even worse, the children are often exposed to persistent tensions, uncertainty, and being caught in the middle of conflicts between parents. Shouldn't government agencies be doing just the opposite? Because of this overwhelming evidence, the Dad's Resource Center decided to survey the citizens of Pennsylvania to find out how they believe our family courts should operate. So in partnership with the National Parents Organization, the Dad's Resource Center very recently commissioned and paid for an independent poll of the attitudes of Pennsylvanians regarding shared parenting when parents live apart. We are announcing the results of this important study for the first time here today, and they are truly extraordinary. 97% of the respondents to this poll, 97%, believe that children with separated parents should have equal access to both parents. 97% of Pennsylvanians believe that. 94% believe that it would benefit society if more children from separated households had both parents significantly involved in their lives. 94%. When do you get a poll that convincing? It almost never happens. 65% of the people surveyed, nearly 2/3, believe that family courts are more likely to treat mothers preferentially. Of course, this is not fair. And in fact, it is well known and opposed by the overwhelming majority of the citizens of Pennsylvania. So there's a huge disconnect between what the people of Pennsylvania want and believe is right and what the courts and state agencies are doing. 28% believe that the courts are more likely to treat both parents equally. Only 7% believe they're more likely to treat fathers preferentially. 91% of Pennsylvanians surveyed believe Pennsylvania law should be changed. 91% believe the law should be changed to make it easier for fit and willing fathers to gain parental rights and more parenting time with their children. 91% of Pennsylvanians believe that. This is what we've been campaigning for, and clearly the citizens of Pennsylvania overwhelmingly agree and believe that children in separated families need and should have the active involvement of both parents while growing up. Clearly, they also believe this is not what's happening now. And sadly, this is only one example of the systematic biases that result in children being denied access to their fathers. Let's look at a few others. We know that the staff makeup in the Office of Children and Youth in Pennsylvania, as surveyed by the Dad's Resource Center in 2019, is not balanced. 82% of the staff are female, 18% are male. The ratio of supervisors, 84% female, 16% male. There was a lot of talk about inclusion and engagement of fathers in services, but how can that be possible with this kind of gender discrepancy? Furthermore, we found that there is insufficient record keeping and oversight at the county level regarding the issuance of protection from abuse orders, as well as the lack of standards and reporting for guardian ad litems, both of which often impact fathers' capacity to be active in the lives of their children. Nobody ever surveyed these things, and no reporting on this until the Dad's Resource Center went out point by point and gathered this information. But these facts are indicative of how our institutions add to the deterioration of father-family involvement. These are the reasons we are here today. We know that according to a 2016 staff study by the Joint State Government Commission, quote, it is frequently alleged anecdotally that false claims of domestic violence are filed and PFA orders obtained as a tactic in divorce custody proceedings, end of quote. When the Dad's Resource Center reached out to the district attorneys in each county across the state about this topic, many of them were candid in telling us that both during their time in private practice and during their time in office, they have each seen PFAs misused for this purpose. This is not right. By these methods and in so many other ways, those governmental systems and structures that were initially developed to protect the safety and well-being of our most vulnerable, of the children during a time in a life when they're most vulnerable, they far too often, in fact, do immeasurably harm by needlessly preventing fathers from being part of their children's lives. This despite statistics that show that children are less likely to be exposed to abuse or neglect when they live with or have their fathers actively involved in their upbringing. This bears repeating. Children most need their father's attention and care when they are vulnerable or at risk. But our family courts and county and human services systems routinely put children at greater risk by needlessly cutting their fathers out of their lives. This has to stop. Furthermore, research shows that father absence plays a significant role in nearly every social issue that this country faces, including infant mortality, child abuse and neglect, obesity, being sexually active under the age of 18 and teen pregnancy, smoking, alcohol and substance abuse, crime and imprisonment, emotional and mental health, suicide, poor school performance, high school dropouts and lack of post-secondary education, low income earnings, and reliance on welfare and other social support, and lack of civic engagement. Every one of them, the statistics are overwhelming. Father engagement reduces those problems. And these statistics are incredibly damning. Every social ill is intensified and increased by these barriers to father involvement. Every social ill in our society. That is why I say that this is society's greatest challenge, and we must come together here and now to deal with this problem. When fathers are actively involved in the lives of their children, we know that they tend to be happier and safer. Our country is healthy and more productive also. Yet, instead of celebrating fatherhood and looking for ways to ensure father involvement, our government pours hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars each year into public assistance and social services, which in many cases are doing just the opposite. We need to get this corrected. We can do much more for our children and our society by transforming our culture and our courts, county and human service systems so that they begin to truly value fatherhood and to treat fathers with the same deference that they treat mothers. This is what our children need to have in order to have the best chance of being successful in life. Importantly, now more than ever, it would also better serve mothers who, by and large, want the best for their children. Also, society has greatly changed over the past several decades, major changes. It's increasingly uncommon to have a stay-at-home mother, whether a family is separated or not. According to the American Association of University Women's Association, the labor force participation rate of single, widowed, or divorced mothers with children under the age of 18 is 72%. Nearly 3/4 of mothers with kids under the age of 18 are working. For the practical aspect of assisting with their care, getting them to and from their activities, to helping them deal with the extraordinary pressures that they face in our modern world, parenting is a two-person job. In our internet and social media age, children face extraordinary and unprecedented pressures. They're constantly bombarded by outside negative influences. The high cost for post-secondary education and our rapidly changing job market, which is only going to accelerate, are making it tough for them to plan for their future. It is simply too much of a job for one parent to handle, whether they are living together or not. Our children desperately need both mom and dad working together on their behalf. As a partner in raising their children, fathers can and should provide vital support and relief for mothers. According to the National Fatherhood Initiative, when fathers are actively involved in raising their children, mothers benefit by being more likely to receive prenatal care, being less likely to smoke during pregnancy, having healthier births, having lower risk of postpartum depression. It is in everyone's interest to solve this problem. The best thing we can do to support mothers is to ensure father involvement. We live in a time of great social change. It's happening all around us. And there's been incredible external pressure and governmental directives aimed at guaranteeing that our minorities and our protected classes are treated the same as others. Yet still today, fathers are treated as an afterthought or worse by our courts, county and human services agencies every turn. Clearly, fathers do not yet have equal protection under the law. That needs to change as soon as possible. By their very nature, governmental institutions rarely inwardly reflect in a manner that leads them to voluntarily change how they do things. Pennsylvania has 67 counties with hundreds of family court judges, thousands of attorneys practicing family law, thousands of county and service providers, and tens of thousands of staff working in those agencies. Even prior to the pandemic, these systems and the people in them were overworked and burdened by incredibly complex and challenging situations, as well as ever-increasing bureaucratic paperwork and procedures. While most of the people who do this work do it with a good spirit and intention, many are just trying to keep their heads above water and do not have the capacity to change how these systems operate. Without directives and guidelines that ensure that fathers are treated equally, the biases and the barriers they face will continue. That is why we set our course to involve the General Assembly to pass HB 1731, which would establish the Pennsylvania Advisory Committee on Greater Father Involvement. By passing this bill and having it signed into law, our elected officials will codify that, quote, the public policy of the Commonwealth is to end institutional barriers that may impede fathers in fostering supportive connections with their children. establish support mechanisms to enhance the ability of fathers to assume a beneficial parenting role and assist men in preparing for the legal, financial, and emotional responsibility of fatherhood. End of quote. This will be an important step for our entire country. To my knowledge, no other state will have officially acknowledged the existence of institutional biases and barriers that impede fathers' ability to be in the lives of their children, much less mandate action to eliminate those barriers. This legislation will be positive and truly groundbreaking, which is why other states and national organizations are carefully watching what we do here. It's been extremely validating over the last 5 months, as every vote that has occurred in both House and Senate has been unanimous in favor of advancing this important bill. Many of our elected officials have been personally touched by situations where good fathers are denied access to their children. And many of them have had constituents come to them desperately pleading for their help in breaking through these barriers. In a political climate that we live in today, when all sides agree on so little, to have this kind of support between men and women, between those in urban areas and those in rural areas, between Democrats and Republicans, as we do here, we know our cause is just. It's important to publicly commend Speaker Brian Cutler and Senate Pro Tem Jake Corman for the dedication, wisdom, and leadership they have displayed throughout this process. I met with Jake Corman before I started the Dad's Resource Center 7 years ago and told him what I was about to do, and he's been supportive all the way along. This has been a terrific example of how government can and should work, and we're grateful for all of you and all of you in this movement have done to this point. Please know we're eager to join with you to finish the job now and get this essential bill to the governor's desk by the end of this legislative session. While we're here today to celebrate the incredible progress we've made, we must keep in mind that this will only be the first big step. Once the Advisory Committee on Greater Father Involvement is established, it will make recommendations regarding the possible establishment of a long-term or permanent fatherhood commission, as well as defining its powers, duties, and funding. It will also submit a report to the Governor and General Assembly, making recommendations to aid in understanding, evaluating, and involving implementation of programs by December of next year, December 2023. As hard as we've worked to get HB 1731 passed into law, we need to follow this up to ensure proper implementation by the Advisory Committee so that it truly meets the needs of the children of Pennsylvania. To this point, our campaign has benefited from the broad approval of most Pennsylvanians. The closer we come to challenging some of the status quo and invoking true system change, the more we'll need to be active and continue active involvement of the citizens of the state to keep our momentum going. I have no doubt we will. Father absence is one of the greatest, most ignored crises that our country faces today. Because of our vision and efforts, Pennsylvania is on the brink of historic and positive action to ensure that all able and willing fathers are given the opportunity to play their sacred role in their children's lives. Today, we are asking Pennsylvanians to join us in our effort to transform Pennsylvania into America's most father-friendly state. Together, we will be doing great work for our children as well as our moms and families. Thank you very much.